The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Faster by, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Open line, but lots has been going on in Tynwald today regarding the situation at Manx Care. The health ministers expressed real concerns about healthcare pressures. Lawrie Hooper made a statement on the recently announced Manx Care cuts. Chief Exec says service provider Manx Care need to be specified. So text, email, call and WhatsApp, whatever's on your mind. Let's get it out in the open. Remember, tomorrow we're talking about plastic and the sea, and also wind turbines with Jerome Watts and Bill Dale. First of all, Julian's on with us now. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Andy. I am surrounded by birds at the moment, so if you hear any seagulls and sparrows and stuff running around, you'll know that they're trying to join in the conversation.
Wow.
The manifestos that we had a while ago were transparency and accountability, weren't they?
For MHKs?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, at the general election, yes. First of all, I think the only person that didn't put green issues at the top was, I think it was Stu Peters who did. So yeah. Green issues were right at the top, and obviously they all talked about transparency, open government. That was a big thing. Right.
Well, all those things. Brian, it just goes to show, Andy, that there are bright people who are listening to the Mannin Line, because he was completely correct. And the reason that I said what I said about a red-legged grouse was I was reading the RSPB magazine about 2 hours earlier, and we're looking at red-legged partridges. So my brain juxtaposed the word legged into it, so I was 2/3 right. But interestingly, I've just got in front of me the latest British Trust for Ornithology, the BTO magazine. And on page 20 of the insert, it's saying collision risk is an important consenting issue for offshore wind farms. However, we still have a limited understanding of the factors influencing collision risk, especially in relation to seabird avoidance and their behaviour, and how this varies throughout the year. They also mentioned that there is a survey which is going to do population estimates for black-headed gulls, common gulls, lesser black-backed gull, herring gull and great black-backed gull wintering in the UK, and the Crown dependencies of the Channel Islands and the Isle of Man. So the BTO are likely to be doing some sort of survey for birds.
And just to restate that again, the BTO is
British Trust for Ornithology.
Okay, so this isn't the RSPB.
No, that's a separate one, but I've got both magazines handy. But I just happened to be reading about red-legged partridges, and it kind of it stuck in my mind when I was talking to you yesterday. So there's only red grouse. So Brian, completely correct.
So in essence, what they're saying is nobody knows.
Correct, and also that is quite a big thing. If I noticed there's an article for the Manx Wildlife Trust talking about red grouse, the final stronghold of an almost extinct species in the southern uplands, and then they're spotted around Erie Staine. I mean, that's got to be a massive consideration. We can't be sort of making a species extinct just to industrialise the island with a bunch of turbines.
I've not heard the people behind the biosphere really espouse one view or another regarding what having wind turbines on land, even ones that are going to be offshore, what impacts. I mean, will that make absolutely no kind of inroads into our status, do you think?
Well, this is the worry, isn't it? That is something that's, I think it's quite a thing to be proud of. I mean, you look even on the Net Zero Isle of Man website, I mean, they're talking very, very often about UNESCO biosphere. And I just wonder sometimes if they need to sort of perhaps take the blinkers off and just look at some of the consequences of putting things like wind turbines up and see how it goes. Some things are not thought through too well. I noticed that there's some solar panels going up in Ballasalla, which is probably the least sunny part of the Isle of Man. I mean, I could sort of understand it if it was in Andreas or Bride, but Ballasalla, I mean, many a time I've been out on the bike and thought, right, you know what, I'm going north because I'm fed up with this fog and rain, and I go past Kirkmichael and it's like another day.
It amazes me, and you're right, obviously, everybody in the north will trumpet the fact that the north has its own climate. You can, as you say, you can have fog in the south, go over the mountain, and it's bathing in sunshine in the north. That kind of glacial plain does its work. So it amazes me, we've got that vast expanse at Derby, the old Derby Airport, owned by the DOI, and nobody's put forward a massive solar farm there. Nobody's suggested that.
No, although, to be honest, in the current climate, I think I'd be more inclined to use the land for agriculture because it's fantastic growing up there. There's so much good land with that sunshine. I mean, you could probably turn out. I mean, look at Holland. It's a small country, and they sort of supply the whole world. Imagine what the North Plain of the Isle of Man could turn out. And we've got good land in the south as well. It just makes you wonder. And of course, it's interesting that grasslands sequester more CO2 than trees. So why are we planting trees for carbon credit? Surely, if grassland is able to hold on to more CO2, why are we planting trees then? We should have more grassland. Therefore, we could have more cattle, couldn't we?
Yeah, and also, our peat reserves as well are immensely important for storing carbon.
As is the sphagnum moss, which is a ton of it. If you've ever been up to Erie Stone, never seen so much sphagnum moss in your life. It's like Avatar up there when you're walking around. It's amazing. By the way, speaking of British Trust for Ornithology, another interesting story that I've just been looking at is the British Geological Survey. And they're saying in recent times, geothermal drilling technology has moved on leaps and bounds, and there are now 1,000 geothermal projects, including in the northeast of England and also in Cornwall. Some new stuff, which, of course, those two areas have the same kind of granite formations and slate formations that we do. Yeah. And they're saying with the latest materials, the 3-axis little motors that can steer the drilling head, they're saying now there's not really a barrier to almost any kind of drilling. So I'm just wondering whether, I'm not going to go on about it now, but it just might be worth just opening up the conversation again about geothermal, because I think David Quirk made the assertion that you can't drill certain things. Well, according to the latest technology, it's opening up all over the world now. So we might be getting left behind when it comes to just sticking our head in the ground and saying you can't drill when they're doing it all over the place. It just,
obviously we hindsight's 20/20 vision. We all know, we're all experts if we look backwards, but we're planning for the future now, aren't we, Julian? And we're betting on onshore wind and offshore wind. So, I think Graham Fox-Hume said it's a couple of million for a test borehole for geothermal. I mean, do you think the public's got let alone the politicians, have got the stomach to ask for £2 million for a test borehole?
Wasn't that the same price that they said there was the increase to put the horse tram rails down? Wasn't that 2 million?
Well, yes.
So, it's kind of like, well, I mean, I'm all for the horse trams all the way to the sea terminal, don't get me wrong, but if we're quibbling over 2 million, well, if we can have a power source that doesn't involve using any kind of that would be the only way to make us truly independent, because if you've got wind turbines that only work a quarter of the time, well, 3/4 of the time, we're going to have to use an interconnector. And if Belgium was charging the UK almost 10 grand a megawatt hour instead of making it yourself for 65, well, we're not exactly being very kind of independent then, are we? If we're going to get it through the nose when your smart meter says, well, sorry, but if you want to continue, warming your house with your new heat pump, it's going to cost you £7 a unit instead of 28p. Okay. Do you know what I mean?
All right. Thanks, Julian. Good to hear from you.
Thanks, Andy. Cheers.
And Howard's with us now. Hi, Howard.
Hello, Andy. Just something to watch for the future. I saw it on the BBC News this morning. Burning rubbish is now the UK's dirtiest form of power.
Oh, I spotted that as well, yeah.
Yeah, And they say they're burning the rubbish and now they're doing it. The BBC analysis has found, they've asked questions to people that they already have an answer. Nearly half the rubbish is burnt, and some scientists, they say it's a disaster for the climate, and some are calling for a ban on new incinerators. So how long before our environmentalists within our own government, the civil service and everywhere, are going to suddenly get a brilliant idea here? We'll ship all our waste off the island.
Oh, good grief.
Yeah, with all the CO2 that involves. So it's just something to keep an eye on, where they're saying that it's produced the same amount of greenhouse gases for each unit of energy as coal power. So we're taking each time you take a step forward, somebody's there ready to pull you back too.
It's funny, I got a message in from a lady called Roma. It was Roma who dropped me a note, and she said, I've been listening to and I've been following the politicians who are saying what we should do on the Isle of Man regarding green issues. But Roma said, the Isle of Man seems basically wanting to penalise itself to try and prove something to the rest of the world.
Exactly.
When many other people are doing far more than we are. She said it's a form of national masochism. We're penalising ourselves to prove something to other people who really don't care.
Exactly. That's you've got, I think it's tomorrow or sometime this week, you got somebody on that talks about plastics in the sea, etc.
Yeah.
Well, where do the majority of those come from? India, Pakistan, all around the Middle Eastern places where they're dumping the rubbish, and Britain, and the Isle of Man, I suppose, included in certain instances, are shipping it off to these countries. So it's out of sight, it's out of mind.
I can tell you, Howard, in fact, we were doing lots of research on what we're talking about tomorrow, but the 10 largest emitters of oceanic plastic pollution: China, Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Egypt, Malaysia, Nigeria, and Bangladesh.
And how much is that that's coming from the UK and other countries? And it's another one of these carbon credits. You buy the carbon credits, but you're still producing the carbon. It's a fallacy. As that lady said to you in that message, we've beaten ourselves up to make ourselves look good. You come home black and blue, but I've had a good day out and I've been a good boy. And this is exactly what's happening. So I wonder how soon, it'd be interesting to see how soon we get somebody within government dragging the back out of the incinerator out there. And I forget how much energy they produce, and it does go across it. It's sold, I think somebody said something about £3 million worth.
Oh, it does. I mean, it is actually an energy from waste plant. But it's just not principally a power station. But I don't know who owns it these days. Who owns it now? Is it the Royal Bank of Scotland still? I
don't know. They keep changing hands. Each time you turn round, there's another sign up saying another company's operating it and owner it and this, that and the other.
Yeah.
But, it's scientists. The scientists, very handy, but sometimes they're a waste of time, and this is exactly... I said, talking about burying waste again now. And, that's the silly part about it. And as you say, don't beat yourself up. Do something about it.
Yeah, and you mentioned, as soon as you said that word, I kind of, my heart sank, Howard. Experts.
Yes.
Experts have said, who are these experts? Who do they represent? Who's funding them? Have they written a research paper? Are they at a university? Are they self-taught? Who are they? And who do they represent?
Well, it says here the BBC, who is a television company, not an environmental company, examined 5 years of data from across the country. Now, who is leading that examination of the 5 years of data? Who's leading that? Who is sponsored by it? Who is, as you say, what companies are supporting it? and they're only bringing up numbers and tick boxes which can be altered to suit the project.
But I mean, they knew full well when they were burning waste, as we did as well. It's not rocket science. If you burn waste, you're going to create some carbon monoxide, which will attach itself to another molecule, and then you'll have carbon dioxide. That's how it works. We all knew that. I mean, the fact is now they've closed down, I think it was last week, the last coal-burning plant in Britain, in England, closed down at Ratcliffe-on-Soar. So nobody's burning coal anymore, but they are burning rubbish. And we knew we were doing that, or they knew they were doing that anyway. So where's the big surprise? How come, I mean...
Well, how long has that incinerator been there? It's over 20 years.
Oh, yes, easily.
And the scrubbers and everything, the added scrubbers, and to be perfectly honest, I've been round it. I don't know if they still do them, but they were doing conducted tours, and it's fascinating. You think it's just rubbish, but you start from the top and work all the way down to the burner and right down through to where the different types of ash are segregated, and some of them are taken away to be treated within the UK to specialist plants. Dirty ash, as they would call it. And it's a fascinating system of working. And at least 2 hours going round it. Not just a wander in, see something getting burnt and then out again. The chap that does the tour is very, very intelligent, and he will give you a full description of what is happening.
Yeah.
But I remember all the fights and the squabbles and everything over the fact that there were going to be poisonous gases and everything.
Oh, Howard, I was doing Mannin Line at the time, and there were strands of thought that said that everybody at Paul Rose is going to get cancer because of everything that was coming out of the top, and we didn't know about the scrubbers, or we'd heard about the scrubbers. We didn't know how effective they were, and of course, it's a bit like Sulby Reservoir. It's very quietly, it's done its job for 20 odd years.
Exactly, but the crazy part about it was that they had the incinerator, had everybody shouting and bawling it shouldn't be built, and then Douglas Town Council, as they were then, put all coal fires in all over Annika. And with the temperature inversion of this time of year, with the cold air coming in at night, you couldn't see your hand in front of you with the smoke. So where was all the objections to the coal fires going in?
I know, you almost expected Sherlock Holmes to walk out at one point.
Well, I was coming home from work, and you could see it like a blanket all over the top of, Fort North, all the way down through. It was like a blanket across the top of Douglas. They eventually had to take the coal fires out because it was, self-destructive. It was going to kill a lot of people. But that aside, not less than half a mile away was a piece of equipment, the incinerator, as we called it then, doing his job quietly in the background and not putting any emissions out of any consequence.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, but this is just something. It's on the BBC website, and it's a BBC News, and it'd be interesting to see if or when any of our politicians or our environmentalists, or whatever it is they call themselves these days, pick up on it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Howard.
Okay, take care.
Good to hear from you. That's a note in from Graham, who just said, I agree with everything that Roma said about the fact that we're indulging in national masochism, wanting to penalise ourselves just to try and prove something to the rest of the world. Now, on a related theme, Graham dropped a note in just to say, am I right in saying that the post office, the Manx Post Office, Halaman Post, have bought lots of electric vehicles? Is this because they're handling some Amazon traffic now, and Amazon have insisted on this so that Amazon can prove that they're going to be carbon neutral, so that they want their providers or their deliverers to use electric vehicles. Don't know, but it's a thought, and thanks for raising it. It's good to hear from you. A note in just says regarding, we were talking about charging for stuff yesterday with Manx Care, and the fact that £3.85 per prescription is a lot less than other people pay elsewhere, so maybe that's one of the first things that could happen is that we start paying more for our prescriptions. John dropped a note in allied subjects. Does anybody know if the Courier newspaper stopped being printed? No, I've seen it recently. Whereabouts are you, John? We've heard in the past about the Courier just not appearing in many places. I wouldn't imagine the advertisers are terribly happy about that. It's probably sold on the basis it goes to a lot of households. I'm in Port Erin with friends. What a lovely, clean and tidy place it is. The local commissioners are doing a great job. However, the DOI-owned and run railway station is a mess. Disgusting, says Frankie Francis Francesca. Inside and outside, the loos stink to high heaven. I'm sorry, it's lunchtime. There's also leaking waste in the gents, shall we say. My partner said the women's is a mess too. And outside, there are fag ends and the dead and dying hanging baskets are a mess. Is this what we have to offer as a first sight to holiday makers? Anybody in Port Erin, can you tell me what the railway station's looking like? I'm told MHKs and LegCo members are self-employed and not employed directly by the government. If this is so, the government are nuking no NI contributions for Tynwald members. Is this so? I didn't know. I don't think MHKs are self-employed. Never heard that one before. The health ministers face questions in Tynwald today, this morning, following Manx Care's recent announcements about cuts to the service. Lawrie Hooper MHK told Tynwald Court it wasn't a position anyone wanted to be in, but there are few other options. Mr. Hooper.
The reality is that we have regular and ongoing dialogue around these things. We have, I think, as a department, pushed Manx Care to consider and to undertake savings measures and cost improvement measures that perhaps otherwise they would not have considered themselves. But ultimately, I think in this particular instance, the Department of Manx Care are aligned on our views.
Supplementary, Mr. Crane.
Will the Minister comment on specifically how the temporary closure of the Mental Health Recovery College and the non-renewal of the Cooth and Quell mental health contracts are expected to impact on vulnerable people and on the suicide prevention strategy?
I think the Honourable Member for Council is clearly right that the withdrawal, temporary pause of these services is going to have an impact on people that currently rely on them and currently utilise these services. The Mental Health College was one of the actions in the suicide prevention strategy, but ultimately where Manx Care are at is that we are looking to protect core statutory services. There are lots of things Manx Care provide that are not in fact statutory. There are lots of services that are provided by Manx Care to a level that is perhaps more than we would ordinarily require in order to comply with statutory minimums. And the ultimate reality of all of this is when you're being tasked with making significant savings in a very short period of time, there are not a lot of options open to you. You have to do things that will have an immediate effect. And ultimately, this is about stopping money going out the door. That is the clear message from Council of Ministers. That is the clear instruction from the government. And that is why we are here today.
Lawrie Hooper MHK. Well, this problem simply is not going to go away, is it? Have you got any thoughts on this? We talked about it a lot over the past couple of weeks. Was the funding formula for Manx Care wrong? Was it set up to be in trouble? I mean, you wouldn't have thought that will be the case. But really, if the funding model is wrong, as they hint that it is, if Manx Care isn't failing, it's just underfunded, and the answer is to pay, and the answer is always more money, isn't it? I mean, that's always the answer, more money. But we as a nation employ people to plan these sort of things. Manx Care has been going for 3 years. There's not been a clamour every year to say, look, trouble's coming down the line. In 3 years' time, we're going to be in real trouble. So what has been going... If something's been going on behind closed doors, fair enough. But nobody says there has been anything going on like that. What do we do? Geothermal is far too sensible for us to consider, says Liz. Possibly not enough profit for the investors. Well, somebody's got to do it, haven't they? Geothermal, maybe it will, maybe it won't. I believe GP practices get a payment based on the total number of patients on their lists. So surely GPs going part-time will be seeing fewer patients than they were when contracts were agreed. Are they still getting paid for servicing the full patient list? In what world is Manx Care fit for purpose? Thank you, Gary. Certainly, the GP practices run by the GPs themselves, not the one run by Manx Care, but the GP practices, of course, are businesses. They are. They work on piece rate, as it were. But yes, I'd heard about the fact that they were based on the total number of patients on their list, and there was a big revision to that about 15 years ago. I agree with Roma, says Roy. We are punishing ourselves, and India is opening coal facilities and throwing rubbish into the oceans. Why are we to suffer for them not caring? It's so all our politicians can virtue signal to their friends. Please, let's not get involved with turbines unless they pay for them and guarantee the service and the parts. This is absolutely stupid. Yes, it's true. We'll talk a lot more about this tomorrow with Jerome Watts and Bill Dale. Of course, Bill, the man who started Beach Buddies, collecting rubbish off the beach, he's had a lot to say about plastic on our beaches, and we'll talk about it more tomorrow. Jerome Watts, ocean-going yachtsman, not anymore, but he raced yachts across the oceans, and he knows all about plastic and how much plastic you will see in the middle of the ocean. And yes, it is true, the 10 largest producers of ocean plastic, from the most to the least: number 1, China; number 2, Indonesia; number 3, Philippines; number 4, Vietnam; number 5, Sri Lanka; number 6, Thailand; number 7, Egypt; number 8, Malaysia; number 9, Nigeria; number 10, Bangladesh. Through the rivers, the Yangtze River, the Indus River, the Yellow River, the Nile, the Ganges, the Niger, the Mekong Delta, they are throwing plastic willy-nilly into the sea. Now, they reckon, and this is an old number, but they reckon there's 86 million tons of plastic floating around or sunk to the bottom of the ocean. 86 million tons. Not just as floating big stuff, but stuff that's degraded and is microplastic that's getting eaten by fish and by some sea mammals as well, and also stuff that we eat. So, and again, Bill Dale's mentioned this many times, we're eating microplastics when we eat fish. We are eating microplastics. So it's not good for us, not good for the environment, certainly not good for the animals.
Hi, I'm Davey Todd, and I want to wish Manx Radio a happy 60th birthday.
Feeding friends and family with the finest the island has to offer. The Forge Smokehouse and Grill Santon. Fresh Manx produce marinated, slowly cooked, grilled and smoked to perfection right here and served in a gorgeous setting. Just walk in anytime, no booking needed. Parties, family gatherings and weddings, the perfect venue for any occasion. And don't forget our large marquee for any event. Visit theforge.im and see.
Drive smarter, drive more reliable, drive a great deal at Mannin Motors. With a superb range of cars for every budget, always available. And if we don't have it, we'll source it. Plus, servicing, valeting and prestige detailing too. Mannin Motors, Richmond Hill, Douglas. Find us on Facebook or call 420 420. That's 420 420. Drive a better bargain at Mannin Motors.
Ready to begin your journey toward achieving your desired weight goals? Waiting for the right moment? We're the Tracy Bell Clinic, and we're here for you every step of the way. We specialise in weight loss and aesthetics, and we've a range of non-surgical weight management plans, all carried out by our medically trained experts. The wait is over with the Tracy Bell Clinic. Start your journey today. Book a consultation. Call the Tracy Bell Clinic on 613 323.
Ellen Vannin Fuels make it so easy to keep topped up with home heating oil this winter with our smart tank monitoring system, easy payment plans, and being able to manage your account online. Call us on 844 000. Stay warm this winter with Ellen Mannin Fuels.
We are an island nation and we have a phenomenal maritime and nautical history. Captain Quilliam, Sir William Hillary, and this year, 40 years since the founding of the Isle of Man Shipping Registry. I'm Martin Perkins and I've put together some music that I think reflects our connection with the sea and things maritime and nautical, and it will be going out on Manx Radio on Thursday at 5:30. So put on your sou'wester, get your life jacket on, come and join me, Martin Perkins, for all things maritime and nautical, Thursday at 5:30. And if you missed the programme, you can always catch up again on a podcast on the Island Life series.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Chief Minister said, this is a message from 039, the Chief Minister said on Mannin Line, we have to meet our international climate commitments, which proves what the lady said in her message. Well, we do have commitments. I'm sure we've signed up to stuff and we're committed to doing, and there is a government commitment to get to net zero in the future. This is all to do with ESG. You may have heard lots of people mention ESG. ESG is environmental, social and governance. Basically, that's a shorthand for an investing principle that prioritises environmental issues, social issues, and corporate governance. Now, there's a massive industry in this. Anybody in recruitment will tell you ESG is the way to get a job. Investing with ESG considerations is sometimes referred to as responsible investing or impact investing as well. So ESG came about 20 odd years ago. It was a joint initiative of financial institutions and the invitations of the United Nations. And basically it means that you kind of make yourself safe from activist action, the Just Stop Oil people and people like that. Lots of companies get ESG policies together and it will prove that they are abiding by those three things: socially, environmentally, corporate governance and what have you. And it means that, and there are lots of eco organisations that do target companies that don't do that. They wage campaigns against them. And ESG is a way to avoid, to some measure, action by activists. So we have entered into international agreements. Now, as Roma said, whether or not we're punishing ourselves is kind of by the by. We've entered into those agreements and we're committed to doing it, and we're on the way to doing it. How we do it, how much it costs us and how effective it is, well, as I mentioned, hindsight 2020 vision. If you can read the future, can you tell me what the lottery numbers will be on Friday and Saturday? Let's get to the phones now. And Juan's... Oh, Juan. Hi, Juan.
How are you, Andy?
Very well today, thank you.
Good. I've got a few points there. I don't know what Julian said. I missed the first part of the programme there. But
he talked about red-legged partridges.
They're from the partridge family. Commitments. You're talking about commitments just there. You were saying about our legal commitments, and I think Bonzo mentioned legal commitments many times, and we have to do these things. But I believe that when this was written up, there was no penalties involved from government when this was written up. So these commitments were done, but if they're not adhered to, there was no penalties. I think, if I remember rightly, that was mentioned, wasn't it, Andy?
Yeah, we're hoping to get to 2050 by reduced greenhouse gas emissions, but to net zero by 2050, and then the interim targets to decarbonise the power sector as well.
Yes, but my point was when this was legalised, per se, there was no commitments. So if we reneged on that, I don't think there was no penalties. That's what I'm getting at there. So my point is that if this stuff is actually detrimental and not good for our economy, in so much as financial wise, there would be no penalty if we reneged on that and took it back out of law. I mean, if laws can be made, laws can be repealed as well. So this thing, this sword of Damocles that keeps hanging over everyone's head is like, oh, it's legal and it's lawful. Well, that can be overturned. So, I don't hold much on that. The other thing is, as well, at the moment, I believe is that 53% of electricity at the moment is gas-fired because the UK blackout preventative system was put in place last week. And they reckon until December, this is going to be affected because of low winds and cold weather. So, and EDF now have 4 out of 5 of the nuclear reactors are now being closed. So this whole thing is, like you said there before, you mentioned the ESG word, is just a massive money-making thing for someone. And we go on about the oil industry being corrupted. Yeah, absolutely corrupted. You go back through the whole history of the Rockefellers, it's absolutely totally corrupted. But it's the same people that are now going to be involved in this. This is just a money-making scam.
Well,
Absolutely
ESG, let's be honest. Yes, ESG is a money maker. It's a business. It's a business that lots of people get into, sell their services. Now, whether or not it's worth it in the long run, whether or not it's effective, and whether or not in 200 years' time, when you and I are long gone, people will look back and say, thank the Lord we had that ESG policy because it put us on the right road. At the moment, Ewan, we don't know.
We don't, but what we do know is that our infrastructure is volatile, it's fragile. And going along with ESGs at this present moment is not going to be very good for the people that are living here. But they're going to go along with it because they're being forced into it. Because as we've said before, and I think there was a very interesting discussion with Paul Moulton and Chris Robertshaw the other day, if anyone's listened to it. And Chris is very online with exactly what I've been saying for years now. The civil service is running this island. And until we've got a set of politicians who get themselves together and actually challenge the civil service and say, no, this is not right for us, this is not what we want, we're just going to keep going down this pathway. All this talk, Julian mentioned there about the geothermal, and you've had Graham Fox-Hume on here, and I think that's right, is what's been mentioned. I've said before that this would truly be our own energy. What they're saying now is under the myth of this is going to be sustainable. It's not going to be sustainable at all. We're going down an electric route to someone else's electricity, which I just said there before. They're now in a blackout system, if you check it, in England because of the wind.
Can you think of any politician in Keys or Tynwald or the Ledgeco who would stand up and back a test borehole for geothermal?
Well, surely then we have a problem, Andy, because we had quite a lot of them back a nice shed in Liverpool for our boats to go in at. At what price was that? Just remind me. Yeah, 90 million.
A lot more than it should have been.
A lot more than so. We're arguing about 2 million for something which could give us energy security forever.
Yeah, but
surely that must be was kaput.
It may not work.
Well, the Liverpool land estate might not work yet. Let's put this in perspective. If these people have stood there and thrown 90 million away, what's 2 million on the chance that we've got security? What is that? We're talking figures here. To you and me, 2 million is a lot of money, but in the great national scope of things, 2 million is not so much compared with the money that they're spending and sending away. So until we've got, like you've just said there, really, until we've got a set of politicians who are willing to stand up, get themselves together, get second opinions, and challenge what some of these civil servants are doing. And I say some of these civil servants because we've got some really good ones in there that are working for us, but we have got an agenda at the moment which they're following, which is not ours. It's a UK agenda and further afield.
It's a Western world agenda, Ewan. The Western world is following, and certainly the Western Europe is following this.
And the thing is as well, Andy, is we know in a month's time, whatever happens in America is going to ripple through the world. In about 3 weeks' time, whatever happens, if they have a change of presidency, there is going to be a total change of direction.
Drill, baby, drill.
Yeah, and it's going to change everything. Everything's perspective will change. And then people are going to go, oh, well, America's doing this, so, we're going to go along with it. So in 3 weeks' time, the whole thing could absolutely go on its head.
Okay.
And change.
Appreciate it, Joe, and thanks for that.
Take care, Andy.
Good to hear from you. By the way, I'd recommend to you, by the way, there's an app called Gridwatch. It's a UK one. Obviously, it doesn't refer to the Isle of Man, but it's really interesting because it tells you how much power the UK, Great Britain, is generating and what it's being generated by. And at the moment, they're running, I think, 11% of their electricity is coming from nuclear. 30% is coming from closed-circuit gas. 8% is from biomass. That's basically wood. I think that's the Drax power station. And 33% is from wind. And about 5% is from solar. We are in October the 15th. And this is important. It's coming towards us. It's going to happen come what may. We're going to have a new way of generating power on the Isle of Man. How it's generated, how much it costs us in the end, and whether or not that magic 29p per kilowatt hour changes, and how much we're going to pay in the future. Remember, we've got companies here that use oodles of electricity. The server farms, the ones down at the Runnels Way Industrial Estate, the ones behind barbed wire, some of those server farms hoover up electricity. They probably take more electricity than our 30 kilowatt transmitter at Foxdale. So that's going to cost a lot of money, and that will impact business in the future. Now, we've heard from Lawrie Hooper, the Minister, DHSC. What does the boss of Manx Care say about all this? The Chief Exec's Teresa Cope. Now, the budget and spending of Manx Care has been under scrutiny as they've announced that series of cuts to tackle 16.8 million over budget. Teresa Cope says there needs to be a commissioning process looking at what services Manx Care should be providing and what they shouldn't be doing.
In an ideal world, when Manx Care and the department were being separated in response to the recommendations from Sir Jonathan Michaels, there would have been a programme of work to do these service reviews, to create very clear specifications for what these services ideally need to look like. What does contemporary practice look like? What are the standards for those services that need to achieve? What are the outcomes we're looking for those services? What are the KPIs, key performance indicators, that will monitor the delivery of those services? In an ideal world for everybody concerned, that's where Manx Care would have started from. Having very clear specifications, so we knew the budget was as right as it possibly could be at the outset. We weren't in a perfect world, and in reality we were living with a global pandemic, so that just wasn't feasible. But the department is working really, really hard to develop all those specifications so we can get to that point of saying this is the specification for this particular service, this is what it's going to cost us, and this is how it will be delivered. But we haven't got to that point yet, and it will take some time to be able to get to that point. But I think what's happened over recent weeks, and with the financial climate that we are all living with across all departments, that piece of work is needed more than ever. When you compare it to the Darcy report, say, in the UK, it's very clear we have to look 5-10 years into the future. We have increasing demand. We are going to have to do things differently, and we are going to have to prioritise and make some different decisions about healthcare, because the demand, the complexity of healthcare, the cost of healthcare, the expectations around healthcare are increasing year on year.
That's the Chief Exec of Manx Care, Teresa Cope, talking about that. What do you think they should be doing differently? She said, what will we be doing differently? What should we do differently? What should Manx Care perhaps not do anymore? Now, we're having problems getting people towards an NHS dentist. Is it time, perhaps, to offer a tax discount, a tax credit, if you get your dental work done in the private sector? It might get your filling done a lot quicker. is it a way of incentivising that to make it a centre of excellence for dental work on the Isle of Man? What do we do? In Jersey, you pay £20, you pay a charge to go and see the GP. In Guernsey, you pay to go to the emergency department. That's it. There's not been civil insurrection there. It works. So what do we do? Is it prescription charges, visits to GP, NHS dentistry? What do you think we should do? I'd like to express my views, says Kay. Well, Kay, do them. And Kay says, our health services are falling apart, cutting operations, doctors only working part-time. With a population of 85,000, we should be able to see a doctor when we require one. The housing situation's a mess. Very few new builds. Transport's now unreliable. You never know when the buses are going to operate. How will this give an amazing place to live for people coming from across? We look like a third world country. There are endless scientists, says Steve, wildlife experts and programs which will confirm the number one threat to wildlife by a country mile is habitat destruction caused by fossil fuel-related climate change. To pretend you're against wind turbines because you care about birds and not acknowledge the devastating effects that fossil fuels have on all wildlife is disingenuous, says Steve. Point taken, Steve. But we only burn one tiny power station. That's all we do. Everybody else in the world, well, you know the ones I've talked about, are opening coal power stations. They've just opened coal power stations in Germany because they made a political mistake. Because of the Chernobyl disaster and because they have proportional representations, the Green Party in Germany insisted they close down their nuclear power stations, cozied up to Russia, put in the Nord Stream gas pipe and got their gas. Then they fell out with Russia and then they reopened the coal power stations. Politics, eh?
The Isle of Man has one of the best available wind resources in Europe. Manx Utilities wants to hear from you about the proposed Caervai onshore wind farm project, an exciting new initiative designed to harness our natural resources, which could generate more than a quarter of the island's electricity needs. Please join us at one of our 8 public consultations running this October. It's your chance to engage, ask questions, experience the VR simulation and meet our team. For details, visit manxutilities.im.
We interrupt this broadcast to inform all our listeners about the huge range of bathrooms and showers on display at Pacesetter. Yes, you all know that Pacesetter is known as the island's largest tile store, but I'm here to tell you that their bathroom displays are truly inspirational. Visit Pacesetter on Harris Terrace, where you'll discover a fabulous collection of stylish bathrooms. There's something to suit everyone, with design available. Pacesetter bathrooms and showers to show off about.
Love your local community, love shopping, love meeting people. You'll love being a shop mobility buddy. If you have a few hours to spare each month, join us at Circa and discover how you can help mobilise the Manx community and ensure that they have an enjoyable shopping experience in Douglas. We'll provide the mobility aids, and as a volunteer, you'll provide the companionship. For more details, find us on level 2 of Chester Street Car Park or click circa.org.im. Sponsored by the Manx Lottery Trust as a delegated partner of the National Lottery Community Fund.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Tomorrow we're talking about plastic in the ocean. Have a listen tomorrow. Bill Dale is here. On a practical level, a man who was walking along a beach with a dog and saw a piece of rubbish, picked it up and started a trend, and has been all over the world lecturing about it. And lots of people around the world are starting their own beach buddies, started on the Isle of Man. And Bill will be in tomorrow talking about plastic and the plastic in the Irish Sea. And Jerome Watts, an ocean-going yachtsman, talking about plastic in the ocean and also talking about nanoplastics, microplastics, talking about wind turbines. The Green Living Grant has closed, so what's next to help residents to make their house green as per government wishes, says Mike. Thank you also, Greta. Hello, Greta. Not the Greta, is it? But Greta said, this net zero thing you refer to, where can I see it? Go to netzero.im, netzero.im, and everything that the government has committed to is all there. What's going to happen, what they think we should be doing, when we should be doing it. Part of it is use public transport. My word. Manx Care pay for residents to get treatment in the UK. Manx Care should get a refund for UK retirees to the Isle of Man who didn't pay their NI contributions here and get their pension direct from the UK, says Gaz. Why should the virtue-signalling Green Party take my money from the NHS? How ridiculous this world has become, says Susie. I not only agree with Roma, I'd go one step further. There are two major wars going on in the world now, and the damage to the atmosphere by fires, ballistic missiles and explosions is very destructive. Then you have to consider natural disasters like volcanoes erupting. When will mankind see sense? That's Texter 905. Victoria said, as far as the health is concerned, the public should be allowed to see exactly how the money's been spent. No redactions, no costly investigations. Just let people see where the money has gone. It might be interesting to see also how much things actually cost. Because a lot of the drugs that are used are, well, they're tiny. Do they get inflated by prescription charges? Are we paying more for our drugs than we actually should be?
When the Mannin Line's not on air, call Manx Radio to leave your opinion for broadcast on 682 631.
Hello, this is Doug Farragher. In conjunction with Manx Radio, I'd like to invite you to join us and learn something about our native Gaelic tongue, the language of man.
Thank you, Sandra. When did our government sign all these agreements when the big polluters didn't? We can't afford this nonsense. Sandra calls it nonsense. Pull out of all of them until India, China and the Philippines all do the same as us. We're getting poorer while they continue to pollute and shore up their economies, says Sandra. I'm 64 years of age. Had a dentist until 2 years ago when I was told until they get another dentist, I was off the list. I've got most of my teeth, but the way this health service is going, I'll soon have no teeth, said Paul. Now, Paul, retain your optimism. That's it. Thanks to Chris Quirk on the phone. So tomorrow, our seas and plastic and wind turbines. Join me at high noon.
WINT